I would like to welcome you then to our latest ISN Live event, Leading in Times of Uncertainty, sponsored by our partner, MSB. In today's global landscape, international schools are often navigating challenges that extend far beyond the classroom, from shifting political contexts and economic pressures to the complexities of building sustaining strong reputations, and school leaders are often called to respond with resilience, adaptability, and vision. Our experienced senior leaders are going to delve into these challenges, offering direct practices that can help you to remain open, responsive, and clear while guiding your community through change. So all of that said, I'd like to now welcome Catherine Hayton, the principal at Talim Argyle School, Calber. So Catherine is an accomplished and a visionary school leader with over 25 years of experience across the UAE and the UK, including multiple principal roles and founding leadership roles. We're really pleased to welcome, Catherine. We're so happy that you're able to join us today and lead us for this keynote.
Thank you. So I'll share my screen. So just before I jump in, my school is part of a public-private partnership, which means it's run jointly by Talim, the private company, and the Ministry of Education, which is the government here, because I'm in the UAE. Unfortunately, the project, it was a 3-year project, and this is its last year. We found out at probably around January time last academic year that was going to be the case. So in terms of leading through times of uncertainty and creating stability and trust, that couldn't be more pertinent for us. What I'm going to try to do is give you things that we've done. We didn't know this was coming up. So things that we've done, but things that have helped to future-proof us and protect our staff a little bit. I'm focusing very much on our staff team, but everything that we've done also goes for our parents as well. So a lot of the things that we've done and the strategies we've used are actually for parents as well, and we've done the same sorts of things. So where do we find ourselves now? So at the moment, with my team, I have a team of 80 staff in my school, and one of us have a job as of August. Early days, but it is quite a challenge. So the things we've been thinking about is, so how's that impacting on us? So are we seeing disengagement with our staff? And are we seeing standards slipping? Because it would be very easy for that to happen. And the answer to both of those is absolutely not. One of my middle leaders was doing some professional development work at one of the other schools yesterday, leading some PD, and he came back to me this morning and said, our school, Wadi, it's not just that it's special, it's that it's extraordinary. And for someone who's in this position to come back and say that, it really means that we must be doing something right to make our staff feel like that, even in these uncertain times. So why are we not seeing disengagement? Why are we not seeing a dip in our standards? Why are we not seeing staff doing quiet quitting? And I think for this, we need to go back to the beginning, to 2 years ago, 2 and a bit years ago, and think, what have we done? And practically, how did we build the shield that means we're now in a position where, yes, we're in a difficult situation, but it's not actually impacting on the staff well-being and welfare. It's not impacting on their engagement. And the key thing for us, it's not actually impacting on our children as well. So it was all about, or it has all been about building the right foundations. And we didn't build these foundations thinking in 3 years we're going to all lose our jobs. This was just a start of what we did. And for us, it's all been about trust and transparency and communication and collaboration. And I think looking at those areas as well, it's about, I've put them as a list, but really the jigsaw puzzle is a much better way to represent them. They all fit together, and you can't have one and not have the others. They all go together and they all work to build that up. And really, it was all about our culture. So this is how we built our culture when we first started off. And like I said, it wasn't knowing what's going to happen now. It was thinking what's right. And we started not with PDs and what's the culture going to be? What's this going to be? It was very much what's the most important thing to all of us, and starting from our values as a team. And it became really clear that for us as a team, our core shared value was everything we do is for our children. So we came up with our children are at the centre of all the decisions we will make as a team, and we'll protect that. And then there was a question that one of our middle leaders came up with where we were talking about trying something new. And she said, hang on, who are we doing this for? So that's become like a mantra for us, children at the centre of everything, and anything we're thinking of in terms of what are we doing, what are we being asked to do, who are we actually doing this for? And if it's for our children in our community, then how can we do it? And if not, is it something we have to do? Can I say no, or do I have to find a way around it? Because sometimes legally and with statutory requirements, you do have to find a way. So we kept focused on creating our culture built on that core, central, shared value for everything that we did. So coming through to the list of the different ones that we've got. So starting with trust, the small things really, really matter. It's those little deposits in the emotional bank account day in and day out. This impacts on your staff well-being. That we've just had a staff lunch today because it's our last day together. That's been lovely, but that's not what really builds the trust and the resilience in my team. It's those small deposits every day. And when we've talked to them about it, they say things like, we feel heard and we feel valued. And it's really, because we said, how? Tell us how. And it's really small things like, oh, I came back after being sick and you said, oh, how are you feeling now? You knew I'd gone for a parent-teachers meeting with about my son, and you said, or one of the senior leaders said, oh, how did it go? Was it good news? Was everything okay? Really small things I don't think as leaders we can overlook, because the power they bring and the way that those reliable day-to-day positive interactions with your staff build up that whole ethos and culture of trust really can't be underestimated. And I think actions do speak louder than words. So I could stand there and go, trust me, I'm the principal. Trust the senior leadership team. We've done our strategic plan. That's not going to make the staff trust me. What's going to make them trust me and their middle leads and trust each other is that day-to-dayness. It's really thinking about, are we making those day-to-day deposits in that emotional bank account? So it's the small deposits for individuals, for teams, and for the overall school that really means we've built up a whole culture of trust around things. And trust grows over time. So, of course, first of all, it couldn't be, yes, I trust you to do anything, do what you want. When we started off 2 and a bit years ago, we had to do loose and tight. We had to set the expectations and some structure and say, this is what we want it to be. Around that, these are the bits where you can start to develop. And then as we've grown in our understanding of each other and our understanding of expectations and what it's like and how things are working, the looseness has grown and the tightness has just become our list of non-negotiables then, which works really well for us as a team. Then the next thing is transparency. And this comes in beautifully because transparency builds trust from our experience. So for us, we set out very early, based on our experiences in other schools, with the whole, there's no secrets. There's no, guess what's in the leader's head? Because I know as a teacher, you're going in, you're thinking, oh, the leader's saying this to me, or my grade level leader, but what's the agenda? So we've tried to make things as open and transparent as we can. Anytime we go into any of our teachers' classrooms, we do any monitoring, we're making any changes, we make sure that they understand why. The what, the why, the how, and most importantly, what's that going to lead to? And we've made sure that it's as positive for them as it can be. So we've built this into our system. So any monitoring, all my teachers have, we kept it simple. An Excel document with different sheets, one for their lesson observations, book droppings, planning scrutiny, appraisal targets, very low tech. All my teachers have a link, a live link to that sheet for them. And their grade level leader does as well. What that means is there are no secrets. They know that what I've said to them face to face is what I really mean. And they use that information and we use it with them to really make sure that we're building up that improvement. So there isn't any guessing what's in my head. What does she mean? Is this going to be okay? Yes, it really is, because we try not to do secrets. Obviously, there are some things and some bits of information we can't share fully with everybody. And that's where our decisions as senior leaders come in. And then that's what we'll move on to when we're looking at collaboration and communication, because they do fit together. So for us, the key thing about this and the transparency was making it systematic, making sure we've built things into our systems that we do all the time, week by week, term by term, that means this doesn't then fall off our agenda. We're busy leaders, we've got a busy school, but this gives us that trust in each other, that we're all moving in the same direction and everybody knows where they are, what they need to do next, and what support and development they're going to get to actually get there. Next thing is the communication. Keep it simple. WhatsApps are the bane of my life, but my staff love WhatsApp. So we do have WhatsApp groups for quick communication. But for us, and for me especially, I think coming into this role, it was that understanding that communication works differently for different people. And really trying to think about how do we build that in. So I think communication helps people. It works with trust and it works with transparency. So an example from my school, and again, very, very simple, is that we have a calendar. It's an Excel document, term 1, term 2, term 3. From that, we break down the overview of what's actually happening this term. Everyone has access to it. We go from there and we break that down into one term in 2-week chunks. It says what's happening in different areas, who's responsible, when the deadline is, and then how we're going to monitor it. So if I'm a teacher who wants the big picture and I want to know what's happening in week 10 next term, I can look at that. But if I need what's happening in the next 2 weeks, I can look at that as well. But then we can also, I'll do an email every week to the staff to say, right, the week ahead with edited highlights. And I think it's our understanding that the way that I like to be communicated with and the way I want to keep on top of things doesn't work for everybody. And having that feedback loop with your staff through all of this, because we might have set things up and they come back and say, you know what, that really doesn't work for me. Now, because we've got trust and because we've got transparency and because we work hard on our communication and we have those built-in, I'm not going to be offended by that because it has to work for them as well. If it's not working for them, it means it's not working for part of my school, which means it's not working for part of my children. And I think for some of our staff, and for me as well, it really helps to maintain good communication, clear, timely information. It means that they have that sense of order and control. And when you're working with perhaps a government entity where it's like, okay, we know we told you that all the assessment marks for all of your schools had to be in 2 weeks' time. We've brought the deadline forward. It now has to be in by Friday. When you set the security and the safety and the systems, and you've got trust with your staff, what you can then do is say, right, we need to meet. I need to tell you something. We're going to have to do it. There isn't a way around it because it's external, but we can find a way to manage this and work through this together so we still meet the deadline. I'm not doing that all the time, but they know because they trust me, because of our transparency and our collaboration and communication. They know I'll do that when we have to, and they trust that that's the right decision for us as a school. But the communication is like everything that we're doing. It really is about backed up by actions, supported by trust, and it has to support your transparent systems within your school.
Catherine, I'm sorry to jump in. We need to do a little time check because we're running over. So if we're able, we can obviously share all of these slides afterwards, but because it was just
Yeah,
that 10 minutes, I just
yeah,
want to
no.
make sure that we don't run
So,
out of time completely.
do you want me just to do the last
Yeah, do you
one?
want to just, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And then we'll jump
So
straight in for the
collaboration
next
starts off when
session.
you talk about your school. So collaboration, I would say build it in purposefully. Think about the different purposes you need it for. But if we found with our staff, when they're part of the solution, their ownership is greater and that has a greater impact on your staff and it increases their understanding of why. And I'm happy to talk about how we've done that later. So the shield for us, our culture is our shield, and that's what's protecting my staff and my school and my children at the moment. We have a positive culture built on trust, transparency, communication, and collaboration that permeates everything we do. And that's what means that, from my staff's point of view, we are still extraordinary. And then just coming back very at the last one, I can't see my cursor. Our big three takeaways, I would say systemize, make it work for your school, context and staff, keep it simple. If staff feel heard and trusted and they know what's happening and they're engaged, they're more happy to take risks, which means they're more adaptable to the changing situations we find ourselves in. And the key thing that we talk about is you can't plan for everything, but everything has a plan.
Thank you so much, Catherine.
No
I'm sorry
problem.
to rush you at the end,
No,
but
I'm really sorry. I can talk about my school until the cows come
yeah,
home. The whole thing
we have
schools.
to try and stay as tight
Yeah.
as we can because we only have the hour. Okay, thank you so much. Right, we're going to hand over now to our sponsor for this session, and so we're going to hand over to Gill Dean from MSB. MSB is a coaching and coach education organisation fostering human-centred leadership in international schools. MSB works with over 400 heads and senior leaders worldwide, offering executive coaching and ICF-aligned accreditation pathways for educators. Welcome, Gill Dean, who's the Managing Director of MSB, who's going to be leading this session for us.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Catherine, for leading such a brilliant and inspiring talk there, and to hear it from your mouth and the challenges that you're dealing with, and lovely to hear you say extraordinary. That's a word we love too. Um, so our topic is really just to think about what happens when the map melts. So we can have a plan, of course we can, and I heard a lot about plans there. But what happens when it melts? What happens when actually everything we thought was going to happen doesn't happen? And then building on what Catherine's just saying there, it's everywhere, and even beyond the individual school, we have geopolitics that are tugging at us like invisible currents. We have policies changing faster than I don't know, students can remember their locker codes. You've got children carrying almost like a planetary ache because they haven't got the answers to the things we need to be able to do to save the planet. And there's no real curriculum that's going to allow you to assess whether people have understood that. And I just want to check in with Claire. Can you see the slides that I've
I
got
can
there?
see you do have something that asks if you want to continue to share.
Yeah,
Okay,
thought
yeah.
so. Okay, just want to double check. So I'm going to zoom out from the individual school in my session and just look at some techniques that can look at change in quite a sort of on a bigger scale. So we can look very much in this world at the doing, and it can be a bit cliche to talk about being, but I really want to focus on that in the 10 minutes that I've got. So if you have anything that you've got turned on, let's have 10 minutes of Zen quiet, and just really sort of tuning into yourself at this moment. And for us, it is about extraordinary. And our thoughts around the word extraordinary is extraordinary. ordinary, other than ordinary. So we might fail sometimes, but we do it in an extraordinary way. It doesn't mean that we set the standard that everything's got to be perfect. To us, extraordinary isn't perfect. Extraordinary is imperfect. And that's how we deal with imperfection. And so the other than ordinary is how we see extraordinary. And I see that in the work that we've done for years and years. My background, I also was a principal, state UK principal for many years, led several schools, and we set MSB up because through my experience of leading 3 schools, it would have made all the difference if I had somebody to talk to that wasn't my boss, that had the skills to ask the right questions and the grace and the courage to hold my space and stillness and listen. So give me the space that I really needed to navigate what even then I thought was turbulent times. So I'd really like to invite you to think about where complexity, where uncertainty is living in your body today. I just invite you to take in a breath. And when you exhale, any tension that you might have been holding on to today is beginning to go. And those of you who know about breath work, there's the parasympathetic and sympathetic breath work. And we all know when we're in shock, we go, we breathe in really quickly. That's to take in really short air and gives you shallow breath. To release tension, it's the longer exhale. So when we go through these 10 minutes, you will hopefully be understanding what that feels like as we go through. And it is an absolute technique for stilling your nervous system in times of great change. And we know that there's huge change on the horizon. We know that we have a lot going on. So just for the moment, just locate it in you. Where do you feel uncertainty? Do you feel it in your chest? Do you feel it in your jaw? And do you feel it in your belly? You might feel it somewhere else. One of my clients feels it in the back of his neck. That ache of, I'm not sure what's going to happen. Because whatever we're thinking is absolutely going to show up in our bodies. And we feel it. So this is about leadership embodiment. What's going on in our bodies that tells us that we need to pay attention to. So as already said, and Catherine's given a really good example, we're going through very turbulent times. And that's a very good example in your school, Catherine, of how that can just suddenly come out of nowhere. And having worked in the Middle East myself for many years, I understand the very quick changes that can suddenly come out of nowhere and things have to be held. And as you've said, Claire, we work with hundreds of leaders. We work with school groups around the world and have done for the past 9 years. And during that time, we've picked up on, there are thousands of conversations going on with MSB coaches around the world every hour of every day. And over those years, we've picked up a number of thoughts. And these are just some of the things that are coming through from our many, many conversations with leaders. So field notes that we're getting is that leaders around the world are dealing with complexity and systems thinking by creating conditions and not trying to control. Knowing that there's something we're going to have to let go of. We can't control the outcomes. It's a fallacy, and I'm going to be a bit controversial there. We can be intentional. We can put all our efforts towards it, but at the end of the day, full control, is never 100% going to be in our gift. And actually what we're getting from the leaders is that they're redefining leadership through delegation, decision making going further down the school, but the risk is held. The risk is held at the senior level, but decision making is being pushed down. So how we're responding to geopolitical shifts, curriculum changes, the map is melting in terms of all sorts of things. Actually, decision making isn't held tightly at the top. It's actually put down further down, but this risk is held higher up. And this really strong focus on storytelling and narrative, sense making. I love what Catherine said about her culture. Stories are what shape our cultures. Who are we? Where have we come from? Where are we now? What are our routines? What does that say about us as an organization? So our stories are so important. And if anyone's ever read the Owen Eastwood book, Belonging, please, I recommend it, about how they actually make a sense of belonging in any organization. It's inspiring. And this idea that actually, I love this thing that we're picking up from leaders. They're saying, do you know what? There's going to be, that should be uncertainty, not certainty. Leaders embrace safe to fail experiments. So they set things up, they hold the risk high, they put responsibility lower down, and they say, yep, there's a chance this is going to fail, but that's okay. And I know it's a cliche, it's safe to fail, but actually doing it and saying, yeah, it's a bit risky doing that. But you know what? It's okay. It's okay if you fail. So more and more people are coming to the idea that this is okay to do. And actually, a really strong thing that's coming through from all the people we talk to is that it's on behaviors, processes, and habits. So it's not about KPIs, it's actually about routines, habits, what we do. And the outcomes are emergent. We would love it, wouldn't we, if life was a straight line? But we know it isn't. And we know that as we carry on our journey and we have our plans, that things will emerge from the left-hand side, the right-hand side, above and below. So emergent outcomes are something that's really becoming more embraced. The key thing, though, from what we found in terms of all our research as a company that works with senior leaders, is that this is where there seems to be a big focus. So middle leadership, distributed leadership, future leaders, and coaching cultures. The international schools market is a huge one, as we all know, and schools are being built all the time. And what we're hearing is, in some cases, it's hard to find the talent to actually lead the schools that are being built and are going to be built in the next 2 and 3 years. So how do we prepare our leaders for even more turbulence? And that's why this is coming through so strongly. So, importantly, though, leadership, of course, starts with you. It starts with how you deal with things. And I think lots of leaders can sometimes be really trying to hold a school together with often with great intentions and a strong PowerPoint and a really good attitude. And I'm hearing from a lot of the leaders is that actually we can't be that anymore. In this time of uncertainty, we can't be a hero leader. So I'd like to offer a micro tool for you in this moment to actually allow you to ground yourself into the present. And that is, I'd love you to just feel your feet. Feel them in your shoes or whatever you're wearing. I'd love you to loosen your jaw. And I'd like you to ask yourself, what here is mine to hold? And what is simply passing weather? What here is mine to hold? And what is simply passing weather? Because as we know, a school is not a machine. It's a rainforest. Conflict is not malfunction. It's humidity, where two things come together and maybe collide. It's actually necessary. So instead of holding to try and stop that, how do we embrace this? How do we embrace something that actually might be needed? And that actually there are some stories that we need to hear. There are some tensions we might need to listen to. And what if conflict is just energy being released, and that it's just a whisper or a shout to something that we need to hear? And often we think turbulence is conflict and it's all very difficult and fractious. What if we flipped it and embraced it as a message, an indication, something that we need to pick up on? The other thing that's coming through really strongly is this power of storytelling. This idea that the stories we tell about ourselves are our culture. Yes, we know from where we've come, but also where are our feet right now? How did the story that we tell ourselves get us to where we are now? And something we're encouraging our leaders to do is to actually envisage what's the story we're going to be telling about ourselves in a year from now? What do I hope to be saying in terms of a story a year from now? And that's exactly what we're doing as an MSB team at our meetup next week. So mine is all ready to go. what am I hoping to be able to say in a year's time? But there's also the understory that we don't always pick up on. What are the conversations in corridors? What are the things that are coming up that we don't always hear? What are the things that aren't coming out in emails, but there are undercurrents? So my invitation is to listen into that story, the understory that we need is a whisper to us as leaders to say, actually, I need to pay attention to that. Because those stories are really important. So as we carry on into the next part of how we think about leadership, there's the power of release. And the harder we try to hold on to things, the harder sometimes, the worse it can sometimes get. So there's a real provocation here about leadership as releasing. And some examples could be, legacy initiatives that you might have taken over as a leader that no longer serve anyone. It could be committees that you've got in existence that actually are just there out of habit but don't actually do anything. And there could be this idea of perfect inclusion that actually flattens the whole idea of complexity and is reductive in its approach. So my question to you might be, what's one thing that your school could lovingly release this year? So as we come to an end of this, and I really would love you to sort of think about these questions, is just to sort of leave you with an offering, really, that when the map melts, leadership is no longer about knowing the way. It's about becoming a steady presence in shifting terrain, a lighthouse in motion, a listener in the wind. And my question to you is, what is the one leadership gesture, small, human, relational, that you will carry into tomorrow's uncertainty? And I will leave you with a way of getting in touch if you would like to. And again, there's a QR code if you want to give us some feedback, that'd be great. But yeah, you do fantastic work, and I hope you will have a wonderful break when it comes.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to shoot us straight into our panel discussion. I really thank you for your reflections there, and there will be opportunity as well to connect with MSB then in the survey link that comes out at the end of this, and the presentation will also be shared. So don't worry if you didn't manage to grab that QR code in the time. Right, we're going to jump straight into this panel discussion. I'd really love then to introduce Abigail and Tatiana, who are joining us here as well today. Could we start with a quick round of introductions for those that we haven't met yet, and then we'll jump into our first question. Yeah, Abigail, could you start for us? That'd be great. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Abigail. I'm joining you from Beijing in China, and I'm the head of primary at the British School of Beijing in Shunyi. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. And Tatiana.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Greetings from Chisinau in the Republic of Moldova. I'm Deputy Academic Director and Head of Secondary at the Heritage International School. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We've got such a fantastic panel of expertise today. Our first question is for Abigail. We wanted to ask you, how can school leaders communicate stability and reassurance when external contexts are unpredictable?
Okay, so how can school leaders communicate stability and reassurance when external contexts are unpredictable? I think, like Jill just mentioned, it starts with you as a leader. A lot of Daniel Goleman's work talks about emotional contagion and how the emotions of the leader really sets the climate, sets the tone for people. So I think it's essential that as leaders, especially when we're navigating tumultuous and unpredictable times, that we first calm the storm in our minds before we can begin the work of calming the storm in other people's minds. And when we talk about calming external storms, I think effective communication is absolutely essential. That communication should be frequent, it should be transparent, it should be honest. I think for stability, we need to reinforce our message of a shared purpose. We need to ensure that people remember the why. Why are we here? What matters to us the most right now? In times of crisis, you can't do everything. So it's really important that you prioritize what's going to be a key priority for everybody individually and collectively, and we keep the first things the first things. Last but not least, I think we must not underestimate the power of positive emotions. And Barbara Fredrickson's done a lot of work on the power of positive emotion, as Kim Cameron has also. Kim Cameron talks about the heliotropic effect. Barbara Fredrickson talks about broaden and build theory. The whole concept behind these frameworks is that positive emotions create upward spirals. And what they do is they broaden people's mindsets in times of crisis. Whenever we go through something, the first thing you think is, I can't think, my mind is cluttered, and you have a lot of mental noise. But if we can, as leaders, create opportunities for people to smile, create opportunities for people to feel hope, for people to feel gratitude, their mind expands. And what we create for them is opportunities for them to be creative, to be innovative. And over time, that builds their resources, which is what we want, because crisis is going to come. It's inevitable, right? You're in one, you overcome it, and you enter a new one. So we want to build our employees' psychological resources. We want to build their cognitive resources. We want them to have foresight. We want them to be creative. We want them to be able to problem solve. We want them to have strong connections amongst one another. And the more positive emotions we bring into our culture, the more our employees are able to do that. So those are the 4 things I'd suggest. Number 1, calm the storm in your mind before you begin to do the work in anybody else's. Then you need to communicate communicate early, and communicate transparently. You need to enforce your identity, your shared purpose, and you need to look for every opportunity to create positive emotions, because that will have a long-lasting effect for the whole school community. Thank you.
Thank you, Abigail. Such excellent advice, and really see that power of positivity and how that can impact staff and build that feeling of togetherness and belonging when you are in moments of crisis. Our next question was also for you. We want to ask, what practical steps can leaders take to maintain morale and trust among staff when facing layoffs or turnover or global anxiety?
So what research shows us is whenever you're dealing with things such as layoff, it does automatically reduce staff morale. It's just, it can be inevitable. So it's really essential, the leadership behaviors that enact in order to mitigate against what could be seen as the eventualities of such decisions. So if you are going to lay off staff, it's really important that you're compassionate and that you're transparent with that communication. It's important that the rationale is communicated to the individual, but also collectively, because quite often the ripple effects of such decisions is almost underestimated. So it's not enough to just explain it to the person. It's really essential that we're explaining it more widely so people understand. And then it's not a case of, right, we know we have to make this redundancy, it's out of our control, there's nothing we can do. We need to then offer resources. We need to offer personalized support. Can we help you get into a new role? Can we provide you with a reference? We have to be seen to actively, and this is if we're going to maintain morale and trust with the people that remain. Because if they don't see you actively supporting your employees, that question will remain of, do they actually care about us? Are we a priority for them? And sometimes it's out of our control whether we can keep our staff. If a redundancy needs to be made due to FTEs or whatever it is, sometimes it is out of our control as leaders, but how we handle those scenarios is in our control. And that is what people are looking at. And that's what determines whether the people that remain loyal and trust in you. Also, I think high quality relationships is essential. I think you need to maintain visibility. When I think about the high stake crisis I've been through, I know single-handedly what helped me navigate through those crises was remaining visible. Even though I wanted to hide, I wanted to close my door. I wanted to put my shields down and just say, no, not today. But I knew the moment I did that, it would make it easier the next day to hide again, right? So we have to face those problems. We have to show our employees, we have to show our stakeholders, our parents that we're here. I'm here. I'm the leader. It's not easy. It's heavy. It's very heavy, but I'm here for you and we're going to navigate it together. And I think showing that vulnerability, it's a strength, but it's also a vulnerability, kind of signals to other people that it's okay. It's okay to be unsure. And if we stick together, we can make it through. So that was a really powerful learning I had a few years ago about the power of being visible through the storm. I think also you need to, when you're going through crisis and when you're making decisions that is not favorable, you need to really model virtuous leadership. You need to show gratitude. You need to show integrity. You need to forgive when mistakes are made and work with people to learn from those lessons. What's gone well and what could we do better? And that again needs to be public. People need to see you publicly forgive. Oh, that's all. You know, I had a situation where a teacher came to me almost like cowering, like, oh my God, I've made this bad mistake. And I said, oh my God, that's fine. Don't worry about it. This is what we're going to do. Months later, I had another colleague email me and say, you know, that person went on and told so many other people about your response and it changed how people saw you. So I think it's really important that we model virtuous leadership. We're honest with our mistakes and we say, not perfect. This is what I'm going to do to rectify it. And if you ever make a mistake, I'm here to support you. And I think we need to give people a voice. People see things from, especially teachers, teaching assistants, middle leaders, they all have their different vantage points. So we need to bring them around the table. We can't say there's a strategic meeting and it's a meeting of SLTs. Our views are limited, right? We see from a very narrow perspective. As much as we like to say, yeah, we've got a bird's eye view, we only truly have a bird's eye view when we're encouraging voices from below and we're asking them to feed into the conversation. So I think that's really important to increase morale and trust in these situations, because people know that they're valued, they know that their opinion counts, and they know that once you're creating a strategy, it's a strategy where everybody wins. And that's an important message. It's not about the school winning. It's not just commercial goals. It's people goals, right? And I believe personally that when we get the people goals right, they help us get the commercial goals. And it shouldn't be the other way around.
Thank you so much for sharing all of those kind of reflections and your direct experiences as well. That was a difficult question, but I think you've handled that with such grace and gave us some really thoughtful ideas there. Thank you so much, Abigail. Our next question is for Tatiana. How can schools support student well-being and belonging when families or staff are directly impacted by regional or global crisis?
Well, when families or staff are directly impacted by regional or global crisis, whether a conflict or a disaster or a pandemic, schools become more than academic institutions. They serve as anchors of stability, safety, and community. So I will refer to some actionable approaches school can take, and they are first is to create a safe and supportive environment by maintaining predictable schedules to give students a sense of normalcy. Teachers and staff should model calm, empathy, and reassurance. The second one would be to strengthen communication and connection. First is to encourage students to express feelings through different class discussion, journaling, art, and also to keep communication channels open with all the families, offering updates and resources. Also to prioritize mental health and emotional support. Here, ensuring that there is access to school counselors, even if it is virtual still. Also to train staff to recognize the signs of trauma and and grief, stress. I'm very grateful, for example, for my school community on how we use the resources from platforms such as the National College, TES, ECIS, and even the COVID workshops and conferences. Also, practicing or introducing some practices of mindfulness, like the breathing exercise that Jill has just mentioned, Catherine. The storytelling or reflective circles. Also fostering a sense of inclusion and belonging. For example, just keeping the community rituals, such as holding assemblies, cultural celebrations, shared projects that would reinforce the unity. Offering an inclusive curriculum, such as incorporating diverse perspectives and stories that would validate all the students' identities and experiences. And of course, using the student voice that is involving student decision-making and about different initiatives such as well-being. Creating the schools as a resource hub for support. For example, connecting families with assistance programs. And I will give here an example about the COVID lockdown. Heritage decided to give our students or staff the equipment from the school so that they could access education from home while they were in the lockdown. And this saved a lot of situations because, as you know, families didn't expect they would need so many devices. So not each member of the family had a laptop or a computer or a tablet in order to connect to online learning. So we saved many families back then, but we gave away everything we had in the school. Then also offering some flexible learning options, such as hybrid learning. And I will give another example. When the war in Ukraine started in 2022, a lot of our families decided to flee Moldova because they felt unsafe. So we offered hybrid learning to those families so that the students' education was not disrupted. So they managed to reach exams and everything went smoothly. And also supporting teachers with counseling or adjusting the workload so that we have healthy staff and healthy students. But not the least, building partnerships, local and global partnerships. For example, we collaborate with external partners for support and resources in various ways. And when the war in Ukraine started, as I'm leading the student council, the students did an excellent job in supporting the refugees. So, for example, we collected donations for them, but also our students volunteered at the refugee centers in Chisinau during the weekends. And not the least, including global citizenship projects in their learning to engage students in different solidarity initiatives, such as the one that I had with my students about the solidarity in the COVID lockdown. And we led a project called Looking Out of My Window with some schools in the United Kingdom, just to cheer them up and to make them feel like you're not alone in this, and we will cope and everything will be fine. So all these interdisciplinary projects can connect crisis awareness with some solutions. For example, just the climate action project, for example, my students are part of the goals project every year at Heritage. So when the war started, the students picked SDG 16, which is peace and justice, because they wanted to explore the situation worldwide, but also locally more. So at its core, schools must balance emotional care, academic continuity, and community belonging. And by weaving together safety, communication, mental health, inclusion, schools can become some resilient ecosystems that protect and empower our students even more in the challenging times. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tatiana. You talked about that emotional resilience and what your school were doing, and provided a whole host of kind of really practical ideas there that schools can take on board. Thank you. Jill, our next question is for you. I'm conscious of time, so we're not going to get through all of these questions. Educators, our speakers who are able to stay for our wash-up session, we can continue these through here. If you do need to shoot off, I completely understand, but we'll work through as many of these as we can, and I will continue to drop the survey link at the end of the hour. So Jill, our next question then is for you. How can leaders build the skills needed to move through personal and school-wide transitions with clarity and confidence?
Well, I think this has already been mentioned. Abby's mentioned this. Catherine has too. I think it just starts initially with self-awareness. So if you are so focused on um, delivering things and the doing side of stuff, and you're not focusing on you and where you are, and being able to get perspective on things, you are not going to be able to necessarily start to build. First of all, self-awareness. How am I feeling today? What is actually present in my world today? And it is about looking where your feet are. So bringing yourself back to reality. We have a fabulous human mind that tells us all sorts of stories that aren't true. And we have a limbic brain that is hardwired to sense risk and threat. And it is far stronger than our prefrontal cortex, which deals with rationality. So a lot of leaders in crisis are dealing with worst case scenario. Quite understandably, if you've got earthquakes and you've got all sorts of things happening, you need to get out of the building, you need to do something. But on day-to-day leadership, our limbic brain needs to be quietened, it needs to be calmed. So the first thing I would say is self-awareness and perspective needs to be achieved, and a way of getting there. And very quickly, I'm going to say to do this, this is not a one and done job. This is a life's work. You are not going to be able to go, yeah, I've got perspective, right, done that now, that tick, on to the next thing. Ridiculous. We're always going to be triggered. We're always going to be affected by something. The key is being able to bring yourself back to you. Now without sounding too wooey about it, that really, I really mean it. It's so important. Otherwise, we get lost in drama, stories, someone else's agenda, whether it's government, whether it's personal life, whatever. So perspective. So very important. And if you don't have the ability to do that yourself, find someone who can help you, whether it's a friend, whether it's a colleague at work. You know, some people do get coaches. I'm not here to sell coaches. I'm here to just say you need someone, if you can't do it yourself, to help you get that sort of sense of clarity, whether it's a really good listening ear or asking really good questions. So that's really important. The other thing I would say, so that's first. The second thing is get out there, get out of your bubble. Don't stay in your same old, yodeling into a canyon or that downward spiral. Go and talk to people you wouldn't normally talk to. Go and get opposing views on your views. Go and stretch yourself, because if you don't do that and you stay in your little safe bubble, you're not going to develop. You're not going to get richly strong. So go beyond your own circle and challenge yourself with ideas, and be ready to be argued with and have your ideas changed. So find other networks, find other places, breathe. I'm all about breathing. Return to what is true and the known facts. Don't get caught up in the what ifs. Stick with the facts. What's happening now? Once you know where you are, check in with yourself. What are your gaps? What do I need now? With the facts, with my feet on the ground, what don't I have? What do I need to learn? Self-assess. Go and find it. Talk to people that might be able to give it to you. But also praise yourself for what you are good at, and don't keep thinking deficit. I don't know what I'm doing. So recognize what you're good at, know what your gaps are, get out of your bubble, be with the facts, breathe. And it's not a life, it's a life's work. So embrace it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jill. You're absolutely right. There's never a one and done. It's like teachers, it's like everything we're doing, we're always trying to strive and be better, and know that yeah, we're never going to have the finished answers, or even when we feel like we've really got it together, something else is going to happen. There's something else behind the next hill.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Tatiana, our next question is for you. What proactive strategies help schools communicate authenticity and consistency to parents, staff, and partners during uncertain times?
In uncertain times, authenticity comes from aligning words with actions. And at Heritage, we communicated regularly and transparently, but more importantly, we showed consistency by living our values, whether ensuring no day of learning was lost during COVID or opening our doors to refugee children from Ukraine. Parents, staff, partners all trusted us because they saw that our communication was not just information, but a reflection of our mission in practice. And I will say here that authenticity in leadership means saying what we know, admitting what we don't, and showing what we do. While consistency is not about repeating just words, it's about aligning every action with our school values every single day. And in uncertain times, parents and staff don't want just information. They want reassurance that we are walking the talk. So when crises happen, schools must communicate not only information, but also trust, stability, and care. And I will refer to some strategies. The first one is to have transparent and timely communication. So share clear, consistent information through newsletters, emails, and assemblies. Acknowledge uncertainties rather than overpromising things. Allow parents and staff to ask questions, give feedback, ensure dialogue, and not monologue. And also the second one would be to have a messaging that is values-based. So anchor communication in the school's mission and values. For example, Heritage focus on global citizenship, emotional balance, leadership, collaboration, and communication. Reinforce the decisions are guided by student well-being, inclusivity, and a long-term vision. For example, during pandemic, Heritage emphasized the continuity of learning and care for families, not just the logistics of it. To be consistent across all platforms is another one. So schools should align messaging across social media, website, and direct communication to families so that they hear the same message everywhere. To use a unified tone, calm, empathetic, solutions-oriented, to avoid the mixed signals by coordinating the leadership, the teachers, the student council representatives. And as mentioned here, we should share real stories of resilience, how teachers adapted, how students led initiatives, how the community supported the refugees. All these stories should be showcased and shared with the wider community. Then to highlight student voices through the student council, showing how young people are part of the solution. And this all makes communication authentic, not abstract. And then we also need to demonstrate action, not just words. So we need to pair the communication with visible action. Refugee support, climate initiatives, all kinds of well-being programs. For example, in the lockdown, the Heritage got involved in programs with UNICEF and Education Cannot Wait, or other national or international initiatives to support online learning. And thus, authenticity is proven through words. The next one would be the empathy and care for staff. So we need to communicate openly with teachers about their workload, well-being, expectations, to recognize their efforts publicly. Parents and partners see this consistency when staff feel valued and appreciated. And I will give another example here. The Heritage workshops or professional development sessions that we organized, this reinforced that staff were supported even in the crisis. Speaking about me, as I coordinate the student council, I want to emphasize how student-led initiatives became part of our communication strategy. And this shows authenticity because it's not only the leadership team speaking, but it's the whole community. So, thank you.
Thank you, Tatiana. Thank you for sharing. Again, some really practical ideas in there, and you know, you sharing the importance of that storytelling about direct examples from your school and your practice. It's so powerful at all to kind of share that with us. Thank you. So for those who do need to shoot off after the hour, I've dropped the survey link into the chat. For those who'd like to stay and continue to listen to some of the answers to these questions, we're going to continue with some of these. To our educators who are speaking, I understand if you really do need to shoot off, and we can always catch up and I can ask you some additional questions another time. So if you do need to drop out now, I completely understand. If you are able to stay, we'd love to have you. So thank you, everybody who's able to, who's spoken already, but those who need to go, it's absolutely fine to shoot off now. But yeah, we'll continue with these questions for those who are able to stay. Okay, so our next question is then for Catherine. Catherine, we wanted to ask, what does transparent communication look like when you don't have all the answers?
I think knowing that nobody's got all the answers and knowing that that's okay. And I think that comes back to one of the things that Jill was saying as well. So it's knowing what we can do and what we can't do. And I think listening to what everybody else is saying, for me, it really is about trust. So I couldn't have come as the first day of a new principal and gone, yeah, I don't know the answers to that. There are some things people need you to have the answer for because they need to trust that you know what you're doing and the children are going to be safe, they're going to be safe. So I think thinking about, like Abigail talking about visibility, that's really important to build that trust and that steady presence that Jill talked about. And then Tatiana saying, don't overpromise. So when you're doing all of that, when your map does start to melt, which it does very often, you've got that trust. So it's okay then. And I think once you've built the trust, it's okay to say to your staff, right, I don't know what the answer is to that, but I know that working together, we can come up with some solutions. I think it's knowing and thinking really carefully about what you want to communicate to who, why, and how. So some things, especially linked to like operations, health, you do need to know the answer. Otherwise, you're going to start losing credibility and staff will worry. But there are other things it's okay to say, you know what, this is what we need to work on. I don't know how that's going to look, but I know collaborating, discussing and working together, we'll come up with a solution that's right for us. And I think that then reinforces the collaboration, the communication and the trust. I stood up yesterday at a meeting that we were doing with my team. We were having to redevelop the whole way we're teaching English. And I said, at the end of this 2 hours, I'm not 100% sure what this is going to look like, but I trust you all. And I know the ideas and the solutions you'll give will lead us towards our outcome. So I think it's about knowing it's okay to make mistakes, like Jill said, and that's normal and that happens all the time. Not seeing mistakes as a negative, seeing it as a way of reflection, coming back, reviewing before we move on. And I think it's listening openly and listening actively to your staff. And if you're not visible and on the ground, like Abigail said, you can't do that. So I think it's all of those coming together and knowing as leaders, we're not the fonts of all knowledge. And that's okay. And it doesn't mean we're bad people.
Yeah, thank you. Some of these questions are so tricky and getting kind of we're finding that a lot of these answers are all kind of tying together to pull you into one direction and really it feels like it's that iteration of kind of that trust, that visibility, about understanding that kind of modeling that vulnerability, that you don't have all those answers, taking those moments for those deep breaths. Thank you. I feel like this is kind of building a really nice big picture for everybody who's watching. Our next question again then is for Tatiana. And so Tatiana, if you're able to answer this, I know that you're very busy, so if you need to shoot after this, we understand. Okay, how can leaders model vulnerability without eroding confidence or authority?
Leaders don't erode authority by showing vulnerability. They erode it by pretending to be flawless. At Heritage, we learned during the pandemic and the war in Ukraine that admitting uncertainty while showing a clear path forward builds trust. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the courage to be human while still guiding with vision. And this is a very powerful question because it touches the heart of leadership in uncertain times. Vulnerability, when modeled wisely, doesn't weaken authority. It strengthens trust. And I will give some key strategies that can be replicated. So the first one would be to balance transparency with direction. So we need to admit that we don't have all the answers. Immediately follow vulnerability with a clear plan or next step. It's okay to say, I don't know, as long as you add, but here's what we'll find out together. The second one would be to share human experiences, to show that we are human. So if we briefly share how crisis affected us personally or the school community, to be relatable as a leader. Students, staff, parents, they connect more deeply when they see leaders as human beings. So authority is not about being totally invincible. It's about being authentic and relatable. The next one would be to demonstrate that we have emotional intelligence. So show you understand the emotions of others. Reassure them that the school has structures and resilience to move forward. Vulnerability without empathy is weakness. Vulnerability with empathy is leadership. That's what I think. Invite collective solutions. Involve staff, parents, students in the problem solving. Vulnerability becomes strength when it empowers others to contribute. So uncertainty uncertainty is best when it's faced together. Vulnerability opens the door to collective wisdom, let's say. And we need to model resilience through reflection. Share what mistakes taught us or you and how it helps grow. To normalize the imperfection is just human. Demonstrate that growth comes from all the setbacks, what has just been mentioned by my colleagues here. Confidence doesn't come from perfection. It comes from learning openly and just moving forward. And leading in uncertain times means holding three truths together. That one, our students need belonging and care. Second, that our communities need authentic and consistent communication. And three, that our teams need leaders that are human enough to show vulnerability, yet strong enough to guide with wisdom. At Heritage International School, we learned during the pandemic and the war that is still happening, that resilience is not built in isolation. It is built with a community. When leaders admit uncertainty but act with clarity, when schools open doors to those that are in need, when students are empowered to lead, we transform crisis into an opportunity. This is what we did in the COVID pandemic, and hopefully we model the same example now. And uncertainty will always be part of our wealth, but trust, compassion, collective action will always be stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Tatiana. I think you saw lots of hands clapping alongside there. There was lots of emotional responses to that and lots of nodding as well from the other speakers here. Thank you for such a well-articulated answer. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise. Right, we're going to move then on to our next question, which is for Catherine. What decision-making frameworks help leaders balance empathy with timely, firm action?
I think there are a lot of leadership decision-making frameworks out there. I chat GPT'd and hundreds came up. And that's okay. And I think reading and thinking, oh, that's interesting is fine. For me, what makes decision-making process right for you is your school. So you can make the decisions you make too quickly, but you can also understand where your staff are and where your families are. It has to be contextualized and you have to make it work for you. So yes, speak to other leaders, look at research and things, but then you really need to read and reflect and think, right, so how is that going to work for me and my school and my team where we are at the moment in our journey? And you have to start internalizing it. I can't have something that I've got off the shelf where it's like, oh, hang on, my buses are all running late. Just let me have a look at my decision-making process. It has to come as part of your culture, the way you've built trust and the way you collaborate and the way that you communicate with each other, I think. And I think knowing what your purpose is, knowing what you want to communicate and what decision you have to make. Okay, so if it's this decision, I don't want it, one of my buses is going to be an hour late. I don't need a full staff meeting. I don't need a full leadership meeting to think about decision making. Some things just have to happen, and that's okay. Whereas other things might bring in your middle leaders or your subject teams or your whole staff, where you're making decisions and you're building your culture and your reality and you're moving towards your outcomes that you want together with that shared understanding. I think you do need to find a consistent way of doing it that works for you and your team. And I think some of that can be supported by reading the research and the literature. But I think you're never going to get something off the shelf that's completely right for you and completely right for your team. So I would say read, reflect, get things embedded. Coming back to what Gill was saying, it's about your processes and it has to work for your team. We're not going to be able to make decisions with empathy and really think about our team if we're thinking about a rigid structure. We've got to keep all of that in mind. We've got to be flexible. We've got to be adaptable because all of our maps are melting at some point or other, to some degree or other.
Yes, thank you, Catherine. Again, really building on that as well. So thank you for sharing those insights. I feel like like I said before, really building this kind of big picture about how we can really support other leaders and aspiring leaders during these kind of uncertain times. And our next question, we have 2 questions left that we'd love to kind of get through in this time that we've got remaining. So Gill, our next question was for you. What practical strategies can leaders employ to return to their own values and purpose during turbulent times of change and upheaval?
Okay, so I've got short-term and long-termy practical strategies really, because leaders, well, firstly, schools are such fast-paced entities. They have a life of their own, and you are dealing not only if you're a teaching leader, you've got class of 30 or whatever you might have. Something could happen, like my bus is an hour late. What am I going to do? How am I going to deal with it? And your decision making, if that's your framework, if it's rooted in your values, you need to get to your values pretty quickly to be able to make a decision that aligns and is resonant with you. So if you feel like you need to, and this is the first thing, is you need to regulate your nervous system. I'm becoming more and more convinced that the best leaders are the ones that can regulate their nervous system the quickest. And it's really interesting once I learned that actually it's everyone else's responsibility to manage their own nervous systems, that it's not up to leaders to manage your staff's nervous system. So firstly, really quickly, if you need to regulate your nervous system, it comes back to the breath. You take short in breaths, out breaths, in breaths, out breaths. Do it 10 times. You can make an excuse and go to the loo. Do it 10 times. Short in, out, parasympathetic, out, exhale. It regulates. So once you've calmed that down, you get to a point of, okay, what are the facts? What do I need to deal with? What feels most resonant? And you might already have a clear idea of what your values are, and you can access those then. If you haven't done much work on your values or you haven't done it for a long time, because our values change over time, it's important to reflect on those. And something you can do after an event. And sometimes, again, it's a life's work. You might make the wrong decision. We may make a decision that doesn't align with our values. So how do we reflect on that? So things you can do to get back to your values are, a lovely technique I learned was, think of a time in your life when everything was in flow. You were top of your game. Everything was brilliant. The friends you were with, the relationships you had, where you were working, which country you were in, what was there, what was present. Remember what was there. And journal, start writing it down. Once you've finished, look at it objectively. What's coming through? Is it that you value relationships? Is it you value progress? Is it that you value travel? Is it that you value care? So you reflect on that and you pick out the themes. Another lovely idea I picked up was, imagine it's your retirement party. It's the end of your career. You're done. You're going to go off and do some other stuff. The next elderhood phase of your life. Okay. You're at your leaving do. People are coming up and doing speeches. What would you hope that people would say about you? I'm just going to let that settle a little bit. What would you hope that people said about you? And once you've got that clear in your head, what are the values that are coming through from that? If someone said that Gill cared, that would make me, oh, that would be great. And finally, the last one is, imagine you're driving past a billboard, and on that billboard is the true essence of you. A sentence. It could be 3 words, but what would be on that billboard? And that would actually be you. So there's 3 things you could do after an event. Think about this afterwards, journal and keep coming back to it and refine it. And in the moment, breathe. Think where are my feet? Where are my feet? Breathe, regulate, go back to your values, then take action.
Thank you, Gill. Thank you for sharing such powerful examples there. I think that that thought of thinking about how other people would describe you is a really powerful example that people can use and think about what were those qualities that I really want to strive for. That really brought it into really clear focus for me. Thank you. Right, our final question is for Abigail. How can schools intentionally grow and sustain adaptive leadership capacity across teams, not just at the top?
I was thinking about this question, Claire, and I thought how important it is because we're living in a VUCA world. It's volatile, it's unpredictable, it's complex, it's ambiguous. And if we as leaders think that we have all the answers, we're going to get left behind. I mean, even with my phone, once my son goes on it, he shows me things that I didn't even know the phone could do. So when I think more broadly at how fast the world is moving, whether it's technology or different systems that are coming in, we really need a creative, innovative and the willingness of our team members to want to show up and give their all and build capacity right across the school. And I think it's essential that we prioritize creating a culture of psychological safety in order to do that, where people are okay with experimenting and continuous improvement within the school. I think as leaders, we need to model, I mentioned it earlier, about raising our hands when we make mistakes and saying, okay, that didn't work. What have I learned from it and what am I going to do next? That creates an environment of psychological safety. I think we need to be able to celebrate incremental progress as opposed to big overarching headliners. I think people feel like they don't have to reach the end goal before they're appreciated, and therefore it's worth putting in the effort. And that's what we want. If we want to create that capacity, we want people to have the mentality that it's worth putting in the effort. A little bit of a contribution is enough, right? So, good is good enough. I think we also need to release power. We need to distribute leadership more and give people real tasks, not superficial tasks that, it's all right if they mess that up. I think they're watching and they know the kind of tasks that are being distributed and to whom. So if we really want to create capacity right the way through the school, we need to be giving ownership of important initiatives and projects to people and teach them that with that autonomy comes accountability, and you will be held to account for this decision making. It is an honor, but there is pressure in it. And I think while it's low stakes and while there isn't a crisis, we need to practice this kind of culture, because when crisis comes, the impacts can be far reaching. So if we don't have a culture where we are experimenting, if we don't have a culture where we're trying, we're testing, we're learning, we're admitting mistakes, that psychological safety, then when real crisis comes, everyone is going to freeze. And Jill mentioned just now the importance of people looking after themselves and looking after their own well-being. I think that is essential. But I think also as leaders, we have a role to support them and help them to regulate their distress, especially when they are new to leadership. Because as new leaders, we almost have that, I can't be seen to be overwhelmed. I have to be seen to be able to cope. And as leaders, we have to be really cognizant of who's not coping, who is burnt out, who is showing signs of fatigue, and help them to co-regulate themselves and maybe step back or to review the workload or to make a priority list, especially if our aim is to build capacity. So we do have to take a coaching stance when stakes are low, so that when stakes are high, there's a lot of learning that they can automatically bring into that situation that will reduce and minimize negative consequences. So that's what I'd say to build that kind of capacity across the school.
Thank you, Abigail. Again, some really brilliant examples there that you're able to kind of practically share with us as well. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your reflections on some really tricky questions here about how to manage in times of uncertainty. I think it's been such a valuable experience to learn from each of you and what you're doing in your schools. We do have one last question, which is a difficult question that I've kind of put under all that I just want to throw to you before we finish, as we've got 5 more minutes. And so if you're happy to tackle this and share some thoughts, that would be fantastic. So how do you sustain your school's reputation when external narratives, for example, from the media or politics, social media, may misrepresent your community or values? Does anybody want to jump in with a thought?
I can.
Yes, please.
Well, sustaining a school's reputation in the face of external misrepresentation requires a balance of clarity, transparency, and consistency. We continually communicate our mission, values, and educational philosophy to our community through regular messaging to parents and staff, student-led initiatives that embody our values, and a visible alignment between what we say and what we do. So all of this ensures that our internal community becomes our strongest ambassador outside. Second would be to prioritize transparent and timely communication, because we know silence creates space for speculation. And when misinformation appears, we should respond with clear factual updates, calm, measured explanation, direct communication to all families. And this would reinforce trust and prevent all rumors that might be taking root. The next one would be to build strong relationships before you need them. So reputation is sustained long before a crisis occurs. So we invest in partnerships with local and international organizations, open communication with the media, and a community that engages with us in all kinds of events, and a visible presence on social media. All these relationships create a buffer of goodwill that protects the school when narratives become distorted. And the next one would be to empower students and staff as authentic storytellers. The most credible voices of the community would be, of course, the people that live the school's reality every single day. So we highlight student achievements, teacher expertise, community service projects, global learning opportunities in action. So this shifts the narrative from external speculation to actually internal authenticity. Then the next would be to monitor social media and to respond strategically. So we don't react emotionally. We instead track emerging narratives, correct factual inaccuracies, avoid amplifying harmful content, or use our platforms to reinforce our values every single day. And the goal is not just to win an argument, but to maintain integrity and clarity of our school. So the last one would be to stay focused on what we can control. So we can't control every external narrative, of course, but we can control our culture, our communication, our relationships, and of course, our consistency. So over time, the lived experiences of our community overweigh any temporary misinterpretation. So that is all we do. So I do consider that Heritage does a great job at communication with families at all time, and I'm proud of my team. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for such a again, a really well articulated answer that kind of covered lots of different ideas then in terms of kind of how to respond in moments where you feel like there is misrepresentation happening and where that might be coming from. I really like that idea as well of using your kind of alumni as, these are the storytellers, let them tell you what it's like here. Yeah, thank you so much. Was there anything else that anybody wanted to add?
No,
Yes,
I just
Catherine.
that I think the really important thing there is building those strong relationships before you need them. So we don't, because we're a government school, we don't have social media, but sometimes parents or people outside there might post things that are quite negative. And I think Tatiana's absolutely right. One of our strongest group of proponents for how well the school's doing is our parents. But we've made sure that we're visible for them, we're accessible, we've got the open communication, we've got a strong parent council who help us make decisions. And because we've done that, even though we don't have social media, if parents or if people out there are posting stuff that are negative about our children, our community, or our school, before it's even really got to us to need a response, my parent body have come in, because it's a very small community, so they all know each other. My parent body have come in and said, no, that's not right. And so I think that the building strong relationships before you need them is the key.
Yeah, thank you so much, Catherine. Okay, was there anything else that anybody wanted to say that they didn't have the opportunity to say before we kind of wrap this all up today? No, well, again, I want to take a final moment to just thank you all. It's been such a pleasure to sit here and listen to you share those experiences and to learn from what is a fantastic panel of speakers who've got experience in so many different international schools and places around the world. So I really thank you for sharing your insights with us today. I'm sure then anybody who wants to reach out to any of these speakers, you'll find them on LinkedIn, and we will share then the slides for presentations from each of these today. And those who'd like to opt in to receive their certificate, that link is still there in the chat. Thank you, everybody.